Welcome to Washington State Legends of Soccer and our series Conversations with a Legend. I'm Frank MacDonald and our producer is Leanne Johnson. Today, our guest is Sandy Hunt, one of the nation's most accomplished officials, and she's homegrown from Washington. Sandy is an Issaquah native and longtime Bellingham resident, former state league player, and in more than 30 years of officiating, assessing, and instructing, she has traveled the globe and reached the top of her profession. Now she's officiating coordinator for the Pac-12, West Coast, Big Sky, Mountain West, and Big West conferences, and regional assigner for NCAA play. Welcome, Sandy.
Hi, Frank. Thank you.
All right, good to see you.
And you.
As is our habit in this series, we are going to start from one end of your life and then take us into where you are today. But so tell us, Sandy, about growing up, your early years, your introduction to athletics and soccer specifically.
Well, Frank, like most of us, we used to play outside unsupervised for hours on end. Raised in Issaquah, Washington, on the east side of Lake Sammamish. Had a sister and a whole bunch of neighborhood kids, and we used to go gangbusters all afternoon after school and on the weekends. My dad was a big sports nut, loved baseball, hockey, tennis. They would take us to the tennis courts and we'd chase the ball while my dad and my mom whacked away at the racket, and growing up, I played all the sports, which was common back those days. We played whatever sport was in season, that was what we played. And I learned how to play soccer at Sunny Hills Elementary School in Issaquah. There were a bunch of kids who had grown up in Europe and moved back home. And they got us all started playing soccer at recess and get into high school. And there are leagues available. The high school starts sponsoring sports. When I was in ninth grade was when Title IX came in, that law was passed. And so suddenly there was so many options for women that didn't exist before. It was track and field, tennis, or gymnastics, and then suddenly we had all these options, and we'd been playing all these sports as kids, as girls and boys mixed at recess. And so we just started playing these inter-school sports for high school. And I was drawn up to the Issy Pride women's. It was a girls' high school age team. I'm sure you remember the name. It was a club team. And then we were almost the same young ladies playing for Issaquah High School.
Okay.
And we were very fortunate. We had a coach, John Jarvinen, who had played club soccer at University of Washington, as I recall, and he got us all organized and we started playing and we had some success and just kept rolling with it. And it ended up being a sport that, I played all growing up, all through college, played at SPU. It was a club sport. We didn't have intercollegiate, so it was a club sport that we played all of the schools along the West Coast. We drove in and borrowed station wagons from our parents. We ran out of gas most of the way to Washington State University in the middle of the night. Those were really good times. And it certainly didn't have the high profile that it does now collegiately. But as you know, in the Northwest, we had women's teams that were very successful nationally and regionally. And so it was very competitive in our state to play women's soccer. And that's kind of where it started. That's how I got started in soccer.
So from the college experience to beyond, what were your thoughts about soccer? What were your thoughts for your career when you're in college and about to get out? What was on your horizon in realistic terms back then?
So I'm a recreation administration and business graduate from Seattle Pacific. That's where I graduated from. And I wanted to get into recreation administration, like working for a parks department.
Mhm.
But real life intervened, got married and had kids. And I was still playing in the women's open division, first division in Seattle, dragging little kids around while we would take turns pushing the stroller back and forth while everybody's kids are, screaming on the sideline. And we, do you want me to go into how I got into referee?
Well, yeah, you've told this story, but I think it's worth telling because I think a lot of people have been at that point, and you pulled the trigger. So yeah, do tell us about that.
Yeah, so this is not my finest hour as a human being, but it's the truth. Yeah, so we had a gentleman for one of our women's games, and we were playing at Grass Lawn Park, as I recall, in Redmond. And we probably had the 9 p.m. game. So this guy was doing us, I mean, now looking at it, he was doing us a huge favor to show up. No assistant referees. It was pouring down rain, of course. So this is in the winter or very early spring. I think it was the winter. And he was really struggling. He had not played. I'm sure he was a parent whose kids played, and that was his entry into the sport. And a number of us had played collegiately or in the club system for college and played women's for a long time. So poor fellow was doing his best, and we, as a group, both teams neglected to give him any credit for what he was attempting to do. And it ended up dissolving into like people throwing dirt at one another. Oh, it was bad. It was a horrible. My sister was also on this same team. And at a certain point, I was like on the other part of the midfield when this all erupted, and it was one of those moments where everyone just sort of collectively stopped doing what we were doing, and this poor fellow didn't know what to do. And I remember I said, of course this draws a crowd, and I jogged over there and said, I could do a better job with one eye closed on a broken leg or something to that effect. And I think he was so exasperated and had no idea what to do. And he just turned, he looked at me and he says, well, you're welcome to try. And both teams, so we knew each other, the teams, you knew people on both teams.
Yeah.
And even the other team popped up. Of course, now it's all these women against this poor gentleman in the middle of the field. And everybody was collectively saying, yeah, you'd be way better than him. And so I remember popping off and saying, fine, I'm going to do it. And I signed up for a referee course. And I learned that it wasn't as easy as as players, we all think it should be.
And the first steps, okay, you sign up for a course. Were people surprised you stuck with it?
Oh, very. No one more than me. Yeah.
What would someone expect, and how is it different today? I mean, did they just throw you into here's your bag, here's your flags, here's your whistle, and here's a rule book? Or how much instruction did you get, and what preceded that first game running the lines? Or I assume you started on the lines.
I didn't, but I'll get to that in a minute. Should have. So people ask me all the time, what's the attraction? Why did you stick it out? I was comfortable being in the middle of a competitive soccer match. I understood the competition, the feel, the vibe, the undercurrent as it would begin to change based on an advantage, even just so small as an advantage or a shot on goal. you know, as a player, you recognize these moments where the intensity changes and the wave is about to shift. The momentum is shifting from, you know, it's these little incremental feelings that you get. And certainly as a fan, you understand it, but you get that quicker as a player. And the higher the level, the faster and the more intense that changes players' mentality, sense of humor. You know, I mean, those are the things that change the intensity of games. And I think I was comfortable in that setting.
Okay.
I wasn't overwhelmed by it. It didn't, you know, as a player, you knew what to say when that was starting to happen. And I was able to transfer that knowledge to refereeing.
Okay. And what was your first assignment? I'm guessing it wasn't 12-year-old girls. It was.
No, it was probably, you know, like 8-year-old, 10-year-old boys. And there's no assistants. So you're out there. And you had asked, what's the training like? So I was very fortunate. Linda Veely actually was the referee educator who was the trainer for our course.
Right.
She was a teacher by trade and did a fantastic job of getting everyone engaged. And at that time, we're talking about those overhead projector slides. There was no video. So it was all taught very, very static. It was very dry. And what kept my attention was I as a player, so I'm approaching this as a player, being in this course, and the rules, so many of them, and what we were being told in this referee course that you had to do didn't make any sense to me. It had no feel.
As a player, coming from a player background, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it was just, you know, if this happens, you do this. And I would think, wait, why would you do that? That doesn't seem fair. You know, why wouldn't you adjust? Why couldn't you just speak to the person first? Why do you have to give a yellow card right away for these things? And just for one example, and this is throughout all the laws of the game. And so to go take the story forward a little bit, as I got into more administrative roles, and especially working with FIFA, I was able to sort of ask those questions, and in some cases, not because of me, but you see the evolution of the laws of the game as more of us with playing experience are involved at higher levels of the administrative roles now.
I see.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Linda Veely, who was the first woman to officiate an American professional game.
Yeah.
And who were some of the other early influencers for you, your mentors?
So you know, I already mentioned Linda. Lynn Carr is a name you might remember. Lynn was also a referee that refereed at a very high level, men's and women's games. Washington is one of the only states, if not the only, that really has had a lot of women involved.
Really?
Very early on. Bob Pettengill was a national assessor for many years, a very good referee in his own time. Very supportive of all referees. Didn't matter what gender, color, religion, background, anything, you know. And I think you see that even today in the diversity of our officials in Washington.
So it was, do I have the year correct? 87 was when you would have started officiating?
Right. So this is also the time, and really good mentors were Oscar Mayer and Frank Gorag and Mohammed Zorabi, who's still involved, and one of my very best friends, and Mohammed Saghadeh, who moved away. And he's now in Missouri. So these folks are all in this photograph. Essie Baharmas, Herb Silva, Julia Lacqua, Dave McKee. These are at a more national level, those folks. So, you know, and I hate naming names because inevitably, I hope people accept my apology if I didn't mention them. Betty Schmeck is another one, for sure.
Yeah. So that photo was 1995. You
Was.
mentioned that that was the first kind of interaction you had with a higher authority outside of Washington, and being discovered. And so how does a ref or an official get discovered? At least back then, how was it for you?
Well, keep in mind, we didn't really have a national league. Like Major League Soccer was just about sort of right on the cusp, and being developed and organized. So in those days, it was very fractured, much more regionalized. I would say the way people probably got noticed was through more of the collegiate games.
Mhm.
And even those weren't televised like they are now. There was certainly no internet streaming, for example. So it was a lot of word of mouth. I also, being in Bellingham, that course was organized in Bellingham at the soccer park up there. It was Northwest Soccer Park, now has another name. And it included a number of Canadian officials as well, and some of them were FIFA referees. So Bob Sawtell, for example, was a mentor of mine as well, and Rob Brown, also a FIFA assistant referee, a very good mentor of mine. These guys would come down into Bellingham and referee at the youth tournaments for something to do because there wasn't a professional league. And so I had the chance to learn from some of the very best officials in the world, sort of just the local people would put me on their lines and I would run line for them, which was hard for me. I wasn't a very good assistant referee. One time during an MLS game, because they made you start at MLS when it first 96, 97, they would put you on the line, whether you were more inclined to referee it or assistant referee. And I thought I was a terrible assistant because my mind worked more like a referee. So I was sort of watching the game rather than, oh man, I remember one time there was some mishap, some idiot ran on the field in the middle of a game to disrupt the game. And we all of us, all the players, which by the way, Ted Eck tackled him in the middle of the field and just laid this poor guy out. Anyway, and we were all standing there together because it was unusual. And this is back in the first 2 years of MLS. And I remember standing there and apologizing to all the players. I was like, guys, I'm so sorry. That was such a bad call. And the guys, the players were like, forget it. It's, what are you going to say? I think when you acknowledge, and I would just say, it won't happen again. So then you learn, just keep the flag down.
So the differences between, I'm not sure how the assigning worked originally, but you're doing men's games, women's games, say in college, and what did you notice that you had to change going from one to the other, and what was ultimately transferable?
So the men's game is a little more direct. Usually, there are exceptions now. The more modern game, teams can play all sorts of styles. So, but with MLS, it's a very direct league in general, and it was even more so at the beginning. And the women tended to play with shorter passes, a little less power and more precision would sort of be, but the tactics are very similar.
Mhm.
The intensity is all the same. Women tend to have less, this was my experience. And it was true for me as a player too. I didn't want to talk to the referee. I wasn't interested in hearing I should slow down or stop. I knew what I was doing. Where the guys, you can kind of, that you can have a chuckle with them. It's much more difficult to have a chuckle with women players, I found. So I don't know whether that was unique to me being a woman referee with women's games or just the way it was.
And that held up throughout your career?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it wasn't, okay, not just college, okay.
Oh, no. In college, the players they're still amateurs. The coaches are professional. We're, doing professional games or international games. You're working with the whole thing. Everybody's paid professional. So the amateurs with the college, you have a little bit more division of talent. So maybe in college there are, 3, 4, 5 players who are terrific, and then the wide majority are very good, and then there's a few who are really either younger or struggling to keep up, and that's a little less common, especially now in the professional leagues. I mean, that's always the case, but you don't have superstars up through in 1 to 11.
So your first college match pegged at 1992. By 94, you're doing probably not a enviable task for you. You're running, I at least show you on the line for the Sounders, and then by 96, you're doing a Sounders game. These are A-League games,
right
in the middle. So it's not a full-time occupation.
No.
So how do you apply yourself to climbing the ladder? If I assume you aspired and you didn't just fall into a career in officiating.
No, in my case, I had a very supportive partner. My husband was very supportive of me going forward and giving this a try. I have 3 kids who are all grown, and they were also part of the support system at home. They got their work done and didn't create a lot of problems, and we were very fortunate in that way. I would go do my training in the morning, and my husband owned his own business. It was a family business, so I'd do my training, do my running, and then my lifting, and then go in and help him at work, and then pick up the kids and get them where they needed to go. And I mean, it's probably not that uncommon from the same story. It's just I used that time to physically get myself ready for the next games.
And do you remember the tipping point where it was I know that officials are paid, but where it became not a hobby or a side thing, but it was your focus?
So it never, while I was doing that, it never would have paid the bills.
Okay.
Ever. Nothing. Even doing FIFA tournaments, a World Cup, we didn't get a bonus. We didn't get any bonus money as women.
Okay.
So this was, I'll tell you what, here's what I promised everybody in order to sweeten the deal for the whole family, for me being gone so much, is we promised everybody one big vacation a year.
Okay.
And they all voted on. I didn't get a vote. The other 4 people voted, where are we going? And we pooled all my referee money every year for one big vacation.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the kids were rooting for me to get another game instead of, oh my gosh, not another game. It made the difference whether we could go somewhere internationally or it had to be in. Yeah.
Well, that stands to reason. I imagine when you started out, especially in the A-League, well, in college, you're getting paid and they're not. They're getting a tuition maybe. But in those early days of the Sounders, you might have been making as much as they were per game. So
Yeah. Maybe $100, $150 as a referee.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a labor of love.
Sure.
I mean, like a lot of us, we do what we love. I've been told many times you should have gone to the NBA, or you're wasting your energy here. You should be making more money doing it. But I wouldn't have been happy doing that. I was very fortunate that I got to do what I loved.
So MLS took you through the assistants, and then in '98 you were you shared the honor of becoming the first woman to officiate an MLS league match with Nancy Lay, I believe is her name.
That's right.
what leads up to that? Is it a circus, or was it a natural progression? I imagine they wanted you both to officiate on the same day to
Yeah.
share the honor, but take us through that.
So yeah, it was a process of making sure, and it was with most people, although I went to national camp, which is a annual referee refresher for all, at that time was all the national referees, and you had a fitness test, and you did it the same weekend, and it was essentially 3.5 days of training, or 2 half days and 2 full days of training, classroom type stuff. Well, once MLS started, so in 96, 97, they started having preseason, and we went to Florida where the MLS were having their preseason, and they put me on 3 games in 3 days, which is unheard of. And I was on the line, 3 games in 3 days, and so you had to come in early, a couple days early. So I flew in. The national camp was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then you left on Sunday. So I flew in on, I think it was Tuesday, and did a game Tuesday night, I think it was.
Jeez.
But anyway, yeah, it was nuts. I mean, certainly would never happen now. And so not only are you doing it in front of the assigners for Major League Soccer, but you're also, by the end of it, when you're the most tired, you're also refereeing in front of all the national referees. And the guys all said, "This isn't right. We need to say something." I said, "Hey, hold on a second. If you guys were offered 3 games in 3 days, would you say no?" And the guys all went, "No." And I said, "Just leave it alone. It'll all either sink or swim. If I shouldn't be there, I don't want to be there, because I don't want to embarrass myself."
Mhm.
And so we finished up, we ended up with the end of camp, and the signers, who were Herb Silva and Joe Macknick, and Essie Baharmas was by now the in charge of US soccer referee department, came over and in front of the local guys, Frank, myself, Oscar, and the Moes, and said, shook my hand and said, "Welcome to MLS." So everybody, we left there with a big grin on our face. It was a group accomplishment. I had, though, without those guys, I would never, ever have had the opportunity, ever. These guys, we trained together. I would drive down from Bellingham. Oscar would drive up from Tacoma, and and we would all get together and train and run. And then we'd run in the evening. We'd run around Green Lake as fast as we could, for example, and then we'd go study at somebody's house for another hour, and then everybody would take off and drive home. And we did this every week. For like 6 months leading up to camp. And so we were really well prepared, both physically and knowledge wise. Every time there was national camp, we always did very well at camp. Yeah, it was great. These guys are the reason that I was able to be successful.
Did you know Nancy Lay very well?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
Okay.
she's no longer involved. She had asthma, and it really interfered with her career as a referee, and her ability to train on a regular basis. And very good, excellent referee.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what strikes me is, and I've spoken to other officials about this, it's very much there is a team, although you're isolated out there during a match, but a team preparation has gone into each official going out there, at least in the modern generation of play. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. You bet. Yeah. Not to prejudge anyone, but certainly looking at tactics and players, and most importantly for a referee, player matchups. Who's the attacker versus defender? On transition, where is a breakdown more likely? defensively? Where do I need to be to see the likely? It's about a lot of the positioning can be influenced by good preparation tactically. And that's where playing experience is so valuable, to a referee versus someone who maybe only played at a more recreational level.
Yeah, I see. So MLS would be a crowning achievement for some,
Mhm.
but you then keep going. You're doing Confederation tournaments, and then FIFA. How does that? How does one get plucked continually for more and more plum assignments?
So after doing 2 seasons of Major League Soccer, which at the time, that was the requirement to nominate someone to the FIFA panel for your country.
Okay.
And there was no differentiation between men and women. At the beginning, when I first was doing this, there was no women's list. Now, as you know, there's a women's list for referees and assistants. So in order to be on the list, there was also no fitness difference. So in order to be on the list, you had to, as a woman, you had to pass the men's fitness test. And to be a national referee in the United States, you had to pass the men's FIFA fitness test.
Okay.
And that was partly why there were no women national referees prior to my getting on that list. Is that the fitness component was very difficult. Once you get to that level and you're fit, it's just all about maintaining it. But that's why there were far fewer women, and still are probably, at the MLS level and internationally. So now you get on the international list, and about the same time, FIFA had started the under-17 Women's World Cup was going to start taking place, and the youth development became a strong focus for FIFA. And so now you had more women's football internationally. And then, of course, the WUSA was starting. There was this conversation about, well, in the US, we should have a women's league. And so getting onto the FIFA panel, that's where you get appointed to international matches and start to do all that traveling for the international stuff. And then the Women's World Cup, FIFA Women's World Cup in '99 in the United States, that was, wow, what an experience that was. And to be from the US and be involved and to get to do, being from the Northwest and getting to do the game in Portland was like, what a rush. That was so great because so many people I knew were able to be there and share that. That was a terrific memory. That still is a terrific memory, just to have that shared experience with so many people that are, that are meaningful to me in my life.
We talk about the success. You talk about kind of the sacrifice at home. Although you sweetened it with the vacation offer there. Talk about what else that you feel like you sacrificed or others sacrificed to move your career along in officiating.
Well, for me, being away that much from the household,
Yeah.
I would have made a lot more money if I'd taken on a paying job, right?
Yeah.
But so I don't think I sacrificed anything.
Mm-hmm.
The enrichment I got, and I still get from, you look at that picture, and there are a couple people missing, women, but these are all people that are very, very dear to me. And I get to maintain a strong, friendly relationship with people who are all different age groups and categories. And one of the things in Washington that we're most proud of is the diversity that we have in our officials. It's not traditional. This is more of a middle-class sport historically. And so we're really proud to have all those diverse faces in our officiating groups.
Hey, here's a question. I don't know if I previewed this to you, but we as fans, we pay to see the teams, the players. But when we are spectating, is there a way to know, or a litmus test to know if it's being managed as best, if a match is being managed as well as it can be by an official? I mean, do you, when you're watching a game, as a fan, not an assessor, so tell me what we should, when to cut slack, and just
Yeah.
how should we be watching a game with respect to officiating?
I would say when players are responding to the officials, the calls, and the quiet words that are going on, when they're responding to them in a positive way, or if there's a little blow up, a little flare up, and then it sort of diminishes again,
Mhm.
you know that they're communicating well. The
Okay.
players and the officials are communicating well. One of the things I can tell you 100% at these levels, and I think it's true, at all levels, but nobody goes out to referee that you want to be humiliated. It's the judgment business.
Yeah.
And so your common sense and judgment are on display as a referee. And so one of our inherent values as a person is, do I think I have good judgment? And I think it's like, if you ask people, are you a good driver? They're going to say, oh, hey, yeah. And I have good judgment and I'm a great driver. And other people may evaluate me differently for those those two personality traits or skills. But as a referee, you certainly are being judged on your judgment and common sense and your ability to not to manage people in a very emotional setting.
Mhm.
Yeah, because it's not just a game to people. It's probably the same. I mean, you could say that to players and probably really set everybody off, because even at a recreational level, we looked forward to our games all week.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just a game for
No.
us.
Were there any rule changes over your career? I think the keeper rules, but I mean, even, and just tell me what were the more difficult ones to, or are they all difficult to bring into the mainstream? Because sometimes they arrive, in the summer, but that's the time that the U.S. season is at its peak. So there's also when do you have to apply the rules, the new changes?
So first, I'll answer your second question first. The law changes go into effect July 1st. That's
Right.
the middle of the MLS season. So if your league has already begun play, you keep the same rules that you started with. So
Mhm.
that's why MLS doesn't change any sort of interpretation or rule.
Okay.
But for me, the one that I think created, when I was officiating, the rule change that created the most argument, especially among players during games, was the tackle from behind, where it became a red card. It was supposed to be a red card. So there was that sort. Anytime there's a rule change like that, where there's a mandate,
Yeah.
players are gonna, and coaches are gonna leap up and create a conversation or a disagreement, whether it's justified or not, because they can. It's an argumentative point during a game. Hey, that's from behind. That's a red card, to pressure the official.
Oh, okay.
And it was not intended that any tackle from behind should have been a red card, although immediately that was the application, and it created a lot of pressure for officials. And So I would say that was one of the more difficult ones to adjust to. Currently handling the ball is a mess, and we're trying to sort that out at the FIFA level. And
because of VAR, or are you talking about even matches not televised?
Where it touches you, did you touch it before you scored? There's all this, but associated with it. And what I have learned being involved in creating rule changes and new interpretations is the more we have to describe it, the less clear it is. So you should sometimes, so I tell people all the time as a referee when I'm teaching them, if it doesn't look fair, blow your whistle. And if you have to, you just say, that's not fair. You can't do that. And everyone will accept that. Because if you play, you understand, no, that is not fair. You cannot do that. I don't need you to tell me you pushed him and he kicked you and just.
The sight and smell test. Okay.
Keep it simple. That's the best advice for refereeing. But again, common sense, we need to make it more common so everybody would understand what keep it simple means.
Hey, what you mentioned that there was lists, and the list is men and women when it's MLS, but when the first women's league, WUSA, and then WPS, and now NWSL, is it different now in terms of, and did you feel you go from being one of many, did you feel like there was a little more pressure to lead when it's a women's league and you're officiating?
Yes, for sure, because I had the most experience. And actually, so when the WUSA, they had a preseason tournament in San Diego at the Arco Center, and a couple, like 3 of the more senior players, sort of sought me out and said, are you going to referee our league? And I said, well, because I was still refereeing MLS, and it takes so much time to prepare and stay current about what was going on in that league. And mind you, we didn't have all of these blogs at that time. The internet was fairly new, so you had to do a lot of research. Took a lot of time to do the research necessary to be successful on these games. And so anyway, a few of the women players approached me and said, we really need your help. Can you please, and so I was at a point in my life where I wanted to get more into instruction, having learned from overhead slides, as I mentioned. I felt like there was a lot better opportunity for instruction to help move officiating to keep pace with the quality of the players and the coaching that was taking place. Because, man, the coaches are fantastic now. They're getting so much quality out of players. And it became sort of my next step, as you asked about. I wanted to improve the officiating and the message and the way we message how to be a better official to officials, both in the United States, but also abroad. And so as I agreed to do, and I had a daughter at home too, who you saw a photograph of her with us in Portland, I think it was, earlier. And she was, I believe, 10 at the time. And I remember, and she was playing, and I remember thinking, I can be one of many doing MLS, or I can really help this women's league succeed. And so I decided on my own, nobody pressured me. And I decided on my own that I would help the women's league along. So I stepped back from doing MLS. And I only had, so also I should point this out, you had to retire at age 45 at this time. So I was getting close to that. And so it was sort of now or never for the women's league. And so that was also part of the equation for me, is I decided, well, I only have this much time left. Where do I want to put my energy? So I did that. I helped out with the Women's League, and they were very generous with me. They gave me a lot of games, and I worked very hard. I was a fourth official. I would, whatever they asked, I would do. It didn't matter to me. I just wanted them to be successful.
Yeah.
And so I did that for until I retired. Well, they ended their corporation. That organization ended. The WUS or WP, whatever it was, WPS was on the drawing board, and I had to retire. And so I went into teaching the referees, going into WPS and assessing for Major League Soccer. And so that was sort of, and then as I was retiring, turning 40, as I was 44, going to turn 45 and had to retire, FIFA asked me if I would be an instructor. Okay. And I thought, wow, this is, 100%. And I got very heavily involved for about 10 years, teaching a lot all over the world for FIFA too. Yeah.
We're seeing photos of that. Did you feel like you had a lot left in the tank, or were you just as well going into the, transitioning into instructing?
I felt like I had a lot left in the tank, but I felt like I could make a bigger impact and have more positive influence teaching. Okay.
The plum assignments, you did the Olympics, as you mentioned, you were at even the 2003 World Cup in Portland, and some plum assignments. Your last match in the middle, do some of them come to mind more clearly than others?
So, now it's just a good feeling. I see games where I am, people will put up video and I'll think, oh yeah, I remember that, and that was a lot of fun. And those are kind of my memories of it now are very positive. I don't remember my mistakes, which used to drive me crazy. As a referee, a lot of us are, have a perfectionist streak. We don't want to screw up games. We want to do a great job. And so things, I would revisit individual calls or games and think, oh man, I totally messed that up. And if I could do it again, and I think I would do it differently. And I think that's what it was inspiring when I was actually refereeing, was I wanted the second bite of the apple. I wanted to do better.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate that because some people, you get one game and if you don't have a good game, you're done. Really? At a professional level, or international level, sure. I mean, there's a lot riding on it.
We see this photo here, Kalina and
Infantino.
Yeah, I mean, did they ask you which referee you'd like to be most photographed with, or what was that?
Kalina's chairman of the referee committee. So we have a picture with the chairman and a picture with the president I received a real honor to be appointed to the FIFA referee committee. Each confederation has 2 people on it. And so I'm on there representing CONCACAF along with Brian Hall, who's the referee chair. He's the referee boss in CONCACAF. Okay. So he and I serve our region together, and he's a wonderful friend too. And when they're just greeting you to, it's a picture photo op for them and as well as for us, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I know Chairman Kalina, obviously, but I don't know President Infantino.
I also have a question. So you had already done the World Cup, you'd done WUSA, you'd done MLS. And what struck me, I don't know how much influence the referee has on getting assigned, but in 2001, when Seattle Pacific had its first women's soccer season and its first home game, there you are, an alum, which we probably didn't exactly broadcast. I think we were playing Central. But anyway,
I don't think it helped, if I remember correctly.
no, I think Seattle Pacific won, but I don't think you factored in there. But was that a less obvious game? I mean, where you get to come kind of full circle,
Yeah.
uh, because it was a club sport, 25 years earlier. I just I thought you must have asked for that. That wasn't happenstance.
No, but people knew where I went to school. And yeah, and I mean, Seattle is a small, I call it football. Seattle's a small football town. We all know each other. We've been around forever. The coaches, everybody, I don't think anyone felt like something was getting pulled over anybody's eyes. And I believe, if I remember correctly, and I could have this wrong, but I think they ran it past both the coaches and said,
Okay.
Sandy graduated from there. Would it be okay? And as I recall, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
It was wonderful. And same with doing the guys, I did a number, as you know, I did a number of the men's games over the years.
Yeah.
I can remember one game in particular. Cliff came out, he got all upset over he wanted a red card against the other team, which he would try to pressure you. And he stepped into the field over the touch line. He stepped into the field of play. And I walked over there and he was, and I walked over and I just said, Coach McGrath, you're on my field. And he tiptoed back. He made the parents behind and the fans and stuff. I had said it loudly enough that everybody would overhear. And he just very quietly stepped back. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. Because, at the time he was a secretary rules editor. And if the coaches stepped into the field, they were supposed to have a mandatory misconduct. And he knew that. And one of the, and so this is an example of what I've said earlier on, where there's these mandatory things. Well, I don't think you have to throw out a coach for stepping in the field. If you can get them to behave responsibly another way. And so I just remember that situation. He taught me a lot too as a coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, as did Coach Hinton. Also, you learn a lot if you open your ears. You learn a lot listening to good coaches who know what they're doing. Yeah, as a referee, you can learn a lot beyond what we know as coming into it from the rules and being a player.
Learn a lot while they're shouting.
Sometimes.
No one does. You were probably just as glad to see Cliff take his seat up at the top of the bleachers to start the game, I would imagine. It takes a while to get down to the edge of the field that way. Are you talk about assessing, and this is really the final part of our conversation, unless I missed something, but you've been an assessor, you've been assessed, an instructor, an assigner. Tell us what that's like, the process of going over a game with an official, preparing them, and then the postmortem and stuff like that.
So as a assessor, I believe the biggest part of the job as an assessor is that once I have spoken to the official, they're inspired to continue to referee and want to do better the next time. Okay. If it's not in them already to want to do better, and to get them to look at other options other than what they chose to do, to find other options and be aware of when they have to do something. It's mandatory. If it's a denying an obvious goal scoring opportunity, you have no other alternative. But most things, short of something violent or really reckless, you have other alternatives to manage it. And so my job is, number one, to get them to re-register so they keep refereeing, because our teams and our coaches, our players need officials, especially with experience. It's very helpful. And then second of all, to help inspire them to want to become better. That's the main thing. As an assigner, I believe my job is to find appropriate assignments for each person that are challenging and offer them a really good chance to be successful, because I think that is also inspiring as a referee. I mean, now I no longer referee. I'm not allowed to by my contracts and my participation on other things. That doesn't mean I won't when I'm 80, you know. I may go down the street and, you know, and but that's the key difference for me as an assigner, is to find people the appropriate placement, and to take some risks and know when it's an acceptable risk with someone, when they're ready and I'm ready to watch them. And so then I also, the games I'm responsible for, I watch on video, because the college stuff is all on video now.
Yes.
And I cut clips and send them to referees. And I try to be really positive, because the referee personality, as I touched on earlier, is really, we tend to focus on the things that we didn't do well rather than the things that we did well. Yeah.
Okay. So just as an aside, when you see say a rivalry game, and I mean, everybody's got to do their referee their first rivalry game.
Right.
So is there a nervousness on the part of the assigner and the referee going into it, or and if not, shouldn't there be?
That's where I mentioned earlier about feeling that undercurrent and knowing what where the things are starting to change.
Yeah.
That's very helpful. And so as a referee, you get those opportunities for those rivalry games. You might start getting them at the MLS Academy level, might be an entry level point to that. College games, or D3, it doesn't matter. NAIA, there are lots of rivalries. And certainly here, and I remember having a conversation with when Seattle and Portland would always play with the signer, and I think they underestimated, even today. I mean, if you're not familiar with the history of the rivalry, you're going to get surprised. Yeah. Successful refereeing is not being surprised very often. That's how you know you've been successful.
Well,
there are fewer surprises.
Well, I know you have made us very proud in the state of Washington, and fortunate that we've had such good officiating, and that you've represented us around the world. So thank you so much for sharing these stories, the trailblazing you've done around the world. So thank you, Sandy. And I'd also like to thank Leanne Johnson for
Absolutely,
producing.
Leanne.
Yeah. And thanks to all of you for watching our Conversations with a Legend series. For more on the history of Washington State soccer and to learn more about Washington State legends of soccer, go to wasoccerlegends.org. You see it there on the screen. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.